angel investment, but it's not a technology first business, then it's not really about stories. It's about your financials. People will be asking you, how much profit are you making? What's your margin? How well is your corporate governance structure arranged in that it gives transparency to your business? Do you have audited accounts? And there's lots of history to your type of business. A VC business might not have been done before. A business that a PE backer or an equity backer would be looking at has been done many times before. So we know what the ratio to invest in your business is. For a pharmaceutical company, there have been pharmaceutical companies for the past like 50 years. We know what the valuation of the company is, and it's very straightforward. It's your EBITDA times 8 or your EBITDA times 4. So we value your company according to your profit margin, and that's probably the most important thing in a traditional business, the quality of your balance sheets. Whereas in a technology-focused business, there's a whole load of other metrics that you'd have to use to build your business. And the financials start to matter at Series A, but in the pre-seed, you're really selling a dream, you're selling a story, you're selling your team, you're selling the size of the market. So there may be some people with technology-first companies in the room, so I'm speaking to you when I'm talking about dreams and stories and addressable markets and your team. But when we move over to the more traditional types of businesses, we're really talking about your balance sheets. Even if you don't have the right team, you know, even if your family is your team, as long as you can say that, look, we've been in business for 10 years, we've grown our profits by this much, then in a traditional business that should get you financing. But when you're talking about bankability as well, the last thing I have to talk about is beyond equity, right? Because most businesses don't raise venture capital and they don't raise private equity. They go to the bank and get a loan. When I started my business, I started a traditional business. I went to the bank and got a loan. And banks look at very, very similar things. If you're going to the bank to get a consumer loan for your business, because you're in a traditional business, not a venture capital or tech-first business, again, they're not even looking at your team. Banks don't care about your team. All they care about is that you've paid back money before, you're a good credit, maybe you've taken some overdrafts before, your credit is good. And if you're going to the bank to take a loan, then again, the decision will be based around your financials and your track record of success and your track record of profits. They might ask you, in venture capital transactions, I never ask for an off-taker. If they have an off-taker, good, but that's not sort of a main basis of my decision-making. But for debt transactions, where most entrepreneurs across the world are getting money, then of course, having an off-taker, having a big customer that we are actually physically financing can also help with bank finance. So just to summarize, what makes your business bankable? It really depends on the type of business you're in, whether you're in a technology-focused business, where you'll be looking for venture capital and you're looking for a person to take a piece of equity in that business in exchange, they give you money, or you're in a traditional business where you're looking to a private equity firm or a debt provider like a commercial bank. Sometimes we forget that commercial banks fund most businesses, not venture capitalists. Then you'll be looking at your balance sheet and trying to build up the transparency around your financials. So there's a lot more that I can say, but I'll probably stop there. But remember, gifted, talented, hardworking, high integrity are good, but being backable is a skill in itself, particularly in venture capital, being a backable person and being able to tell your story in a way that makes people that haven't yet seen the business that they're investing in, that don't really have firm financials to back up the decision that they're making, but gets them excited because of what could be, is really important if you're in a technology business raising venture capital. Thank you.
Hello? Okay. What Dr. Ola has just said. Now, in the course of our conversation, she made reference to a couple of line items, like corporate governance, integrity, and stuff like that. I would like to come in from that angle. I'm from the traditional business sector. So at the end of the day, why are we really even in Durban? If we look at it, the IATF brought us here, AU, Afrexim Bank. Why are we here? there's a trust issue. The bankers, as she said, will ask you a couple of questions and all that. They want to know, can we trust you? So, how do you build trust? The first line of action I would say is you need to first of all trust yourself. Trusting yourself starts off with self-development, the vision, the passion, the skill sets required to deliver on that promise that your solution, your product is given to the market at the end of the day. So if you don't trust yourself in such a way that you know whatever solution you're putting out there is going to deliver on the promise it has made, and how do you expect the bankers and every other stakeholder to trust you? These are the issues. So starting off, I would say what makes one bankable is in the quality of the decisions you're going to make. Using Africa, for example, as a reference point, those of us from the West Africa, we have a relatively lower trust threshold. So let's say someone wants to do business with us, Nigeria, Ghana, and others, they want to do a lot more background check. By the time you come to, let's say, North or Southern Africa, maybe the requirements drop a bit. So it even means there's so much more work for us to do. The bankers, okay, now let me give a true life story. My CEO is not here, I'm here in his state, but I want to make reference to something that really happened. So we're into the oil and gas business, FPSOs to be precise. We provide offshore support to IOCs and co. And then you find a situation where someone wants to do business with you, an anti-corruption and money laundering training before I proceed. Your vision is not even looked at. The value of what your proposition is no longer considered. First, there's distrust. So it means we have to double our effort every now and then. So if you're going to do stuff, remember, the banks are watching, every stakeholder is watching. For you to be bankable, make sure that's your promise. You're going to follow through with it. It entails you building yourself, making sure that those that trusted you, to the best of your capacity, all things being equal, you deliver on those brand promises. Because once you lose it, it's gone. Now, when we talk about success, yeah, we can get it confused because you see people, what's really the yardstick for success? And that is where it can get really tricky because several people might think it's about just scaling and all that. But then, when you're in business, you must ask yourself, why did you even get to it in the first place? So my CEO would say he got into it for the hustle. The hustle was the fear. Fear of what? He says, you've made so much money or you're in business, you're thriving, and the time will come when your high walls won't save you. For him, it was more of a social thing, looking at your environment. What was that thing that really spurred you to go into business? In his own case, he was concerned about the environment, the people around him, the poverty, the incapacity to make critical thoughts, and then all those things led him to doing this business. So it means every day he wakes up, the people working with him, he needs to earn their trust and not break it. The clients he engages with, the promises he has made, I'm going to produce your oil for you below the market price, for example. Sometimes we have to produce and make no profit. It happens. And in the heat of the COVID outbreak and during the lockdown, several companies could no longer function. But we ensured that most of our clients remained operational within that time frame because there was a promise. Now, what has this done to us? Today, we are arguably the only wholly indigenous company in entire Africa that own 2 FPSOs. Yes, there are several FPSOs in the continent, but go through the ownership structure. They are foreign owned. Maybe a minute part of the equity belongs to one Africa, but totally. And it's because people trusted us. We've earned trust over time. So as I said, giving credence to what Dr. Ola has.
These guys are setting the bar really, really high to get started. I think I'm going to dumb it down a little bit from my answer. To me, to understand whether your business or your idea is going to be bankable, when I think about it, there's sort of 3 questions you you want to ask yourself and make sure you have really good answers to. The first one is why this, the second is why me, and the third is why now. And if you're able to convince yourself that your answers to each of these questions are really good, then you'll be able to convince whether it's a VC, a PE, or a bank to bank you. And the question is, how do you become bankable? So let's go through all three. So why this? What I mean by why this is, again, these financial institutions receive proposals and briefs every day, right? So there's got to be a reason why whatever the problem is that you're talking about fixing, you have to be able to convince them that this problem is a really good problem to solve and is going to be a problem to solve that makes money, okay? So I'm going to use Lori as an example. So the this for Lori is logistics, right? So we, when we went presenting to venture capital firms, we were like, transportation logistics in Africa is a $200 billion industry. There's 200 money that exchange hands to move things all over the continent. So that's the first answer to why that's. It's pretty big, right? So it's really important particularly for the technology type of companies to think big. Because everything is hard. Selling bananas on the side of the road is hard, and building Google is hard. So you might as well go after something that's really big, so that if you only capture 1% of the market, it's already pretty big, right? So why this? Make sure that you're going after a problem that you can show or demonstrate matters, and you can show or demonstrate is big enough. For us, the why this was really about the impact that solving the problem could have on the lives of Africans across the board. Why me? The why me is also really, really, really important, because it's easy enough to convince someone that there's a problem and that it's really big. But you need to be relevant to solving it, right? So in our case, my co-founder, Josh Sandler, wrote his thesis on the cost of logistics in emerging markets. Okay, that's pretty relevant to the problem. And my background is in electrical and computer engineering, and I worked at Google. So when we came and started talking about building an e-logistics company, we kind of had the E and we kind of had the logistics, and we were able to convince them that, yeah, we're the guys that are going to do it. So you need to have a pretty good story as to why are you the right person that's going to solve it, right? And it might be that you don't look like the right person right now, but you can work on a number of different things, certifications, internships. There's a number of different things that you can do to show your relevance to the problem. So we've done why this, why me, why now. So why now is, what are the external factors, so external to the specific problem and to you, that are sort of bringing everything together right now. So in our case, there were a number of very similar businesses that had just gotten funded or founded in the US, in the UK, etc. So if you look at Lori and what Lori does, you'll find that they're very similar company in the US, such as Convoy, Uber Freight, Trucker, Kobo 360. There's a number of different companies that are solving the problem at a similar time. So for investors, right, and present company notwithstanding, but investors in general tend to follow each other, right? They're typically not very original, because original means risk. So investors like to do what other investors are doing. So if you can show them that, the thing that I'm doing is not so different. Look at all these other successful companies. They're doing something very similar. This is super safe. That's the why now. The why now is, tell me why, beyond the problem and beyond you, why I should write this check right now. So if you can convince yourself that, why this, why me, why now, that the answers that you have when you ask yourself that question are good or are excellent, then perhaps when you answer those questions in front of a banker, a venture capitalist, or a private equity person, you'll be able to convince them and you'll be bankable. Mr. Daniel?
Yes. So I actually don't have a ton to add. I think there are some great points that have already been made by the rest of the panelists here. I think I would just double down and emphasize one of the things that was already mentioned, which is basically your track record. So the most important thing in my view when it comes to whether you're bankable, whether you're backable, is do you do what you say you're going to do, right? If you said that we are going to set up shop, we're going to do $100,000 of sales next month, and you come back to that investor, you come back to that potential hire or whatnot in a month, did you do $100,000 in sales, or was that just fluff? Was that just things you were making up to sound good in the moment? Because ultimately, what matters is your ability to get traction. I think as Dr. Ola said, it's not about whether you got the best grades in school. It's not about whether you're the nicest person around or anything like that. It's can you get things done? And if you can get things done, then you're bankable. That's what it comes down to. So yeah, that's all I have to add.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So while you all were talking, I was thinking about my next question, of course, and I was thinking around the lines of there are entrepreneurs, and again, because of the work that I do and the work that the foundation does, we are constantly in communication with entrepreneurs, and we have, or we've seen rather, so many entrepreneurs who go from one business to another, sometimes in different industries, sometimes in the same industry. So I was wondering if you all and anyone is open to jump in, can speak about, or speak to how people, or rather speak to people who are still trying to find their voice, their niche, what their business is really trying to do, who today are selling bread and tomorrow they're making shoes, and that's, the idea is there, they're entrepreneurial, the spirit is there, but how do they double down and how do they find themselves or find the work that they really want to do? I don't know if that's clear. Okay, Daniel, thank you.
Yeah, very happy to speak to that. Actually, it's quite interesting. SocoWatch, the business we have today, we actually did get some limited traction with that business. We had a few customers, and we were mostly working with NGOs and government health ministries. Build on that customer base. We got a few clients, but then from there we really weren't finding the traction in the market. And what you realize is you have to be able to be humble about your ideas. So just because it's an idea that makes sense to you, even when you tell other people about it, they say, yeah, that's a brilliant idea, that's great. If the reality is that you are not gaining customers, that you're not gaining business, then the market is not the right thing to be doing. And so we actually had to make what at the time was a very difficult decision, but what today was the obvious thing to do, which is saying, hey, this limited kind of healthcare business that we have going on, we have to be willing to leave that behind to go in a different direction. And that's when we actually pivoted into doing more of the consumer goods, working with these manufacturers, like Unilever, Procter & Gamble, Nestle, these companies, to then use the same technology, the same kind of core base of what we were doing, but enabling ordering and delivery for more of the small shops instead of, say, the clinics or the pharmacies. And so I think that's another, I think, very key characteristic of a successful entrepreneur, which is your adaptability, your willingness to be humble and realize that this idea that I had is not working, and therefore we need to try something else. And being able to let that go and move in a different direction direction once you realize that your original concept was not the right one.
Just to ask a bit, in that scenario, is there a possibility that they might be throwing in the towel too soon? Like, how do you know if there's still some faith left for you to exercise? If now is the right time to throw in the towel, like.
That's an interesting question. I mean, I think I certainly don't consider it as at least the experience that I went through as throwing in the towel, so to speak, because the number of hours that I was working per week, 80, 90 hours, whatever, that didn't change, right? I was fully dedicated to making something work, right? So I think the key thing in it is that you need to make something work. Whether it's the original idea is not important, but you need to make something work, right? And at the end of the day, that's what investors give you money to do, right? We raised investment for that original concept, for doing the healthcare, right? Those investors today are not upset with me because we're no longer doing stuff in healthcare. They are very, very happy because at the end of the day, they're looking to make money. They're looking to make a return on investing in whatever business we ultimately find is successful. And for most businesses, as Dr. Ola said, there's some differences maybe with traditional businesses where it's easier to just evaluate metrics. But at the end of the day, the operators who are involved are the most important attribute of of business success. And so at the end of the day, they're making a bet on you. If it's a new concept, if it's a new technology-driven concept, then it's even more important that the entrepreneur, the operator, is able to execute and adapt to the changing market conditions, because fundamentally what they're trying to do, like what we were trying to do at the start, had not been done before. It had not been done in healthcare. We tried that, didn't work. We ended up shifting into consumer goods, and we found something that did work. And at the end of the day, finding something that works matters. I think the thing that I always keep in mind is, when they say survival of the fittest, what it means to be the fittest is not to be the smartest, not to be the strongest, it's to be the most adaptable. Because if we're able to adapt.
About a good idea not necessarily being a good business is a really, really, really important one for everyone to keep in mind. Again, I think we keep going back to what Dr. Ola said about there being a difference between being bankable and this list of other attributes that you might see in yourself. Having a good idea does not mean you have a good business. And in that, it is remember that entrepreneurship is about good business. Like, it doesn't matter if your idea is boring or the coolest idea in the world. If it's not a good business, it just does not matter, right? So that's the first thing. I would like to go back to your original question, which is like, how do you sort of find yourself? You have to have something that you can put your head on. Like there has to be either passion or skill or opportunity that is something that you're able to sort of rely on. So by passion, what I mean is, something that you can do 10,000 hours of without blinking because you love it so much, right? Because ultimately, being an entrepreneur is very hard. Like it is, that's the part that we don't actually talk about enough, and is something that I wish we all talked about a lot more. Being an entrepreneur is glorified by the press. It is made to look super sexy with these millions and billion-dollar exit and so on and so forth. But make no mistake, it is a painful life. I mean, like it is painful. It is not the road to advise to your closest friend. just so we're real, it is painful. It is a lot more comfortable to work at a really good company that pays you a big salary, and like, man, your life is generally gonna be better. Like, real talk, right? 90+% of startups fail. Like, it's just not fun. But if you think you're made up for it, just make sure that you have either passion, because like the topic of the work or the company that you're building is something that you're absolutely passionate about, or you just have the skill, right? Like you're a doctor, or you're an oil and gas engineer, or you've studied business and you have a knack for it, just make sure that you have something, and then you add to that the layer of adaptability. If you have those two things, if you have the skill or passion and the layer of adaptability, then all you need is perseverance, and eventually you will find the perfect intersection of your skill sets or passion and an opportunity that comes before you. Yeah.
The only comment that I would add to that is going back a bit. Today, I'm in that business tomorrow. I think that first of all, you need to ask yourself, what do I really want to achieve? And I think that that's a question that people don't. I feel like the base question is, what do I really want to achieve? Do I want a life where I'm working like a startup entrepreneur, 90 hours a week? Do I want a life where I'm an executive of a company? So don't think it's easy. Don't think that all the executives that you're seeing in Afrexim Bank, they're still working at 90 hours. But at least the leave is there, and the amount that you're going to get is there. Whereas if you're an entrepreneur, then you've paid salaries and you've paid your payroll out. And if there's any money remaining, then you use that to live. But it's not as if you have anything really constant that you're getting. As a small business, I'm not talking about a technology business as Raise VC, because then you can use that to feed yourself. But if you're in a traditional business where you are taking revenue from customers, you don't have any investor money, and you're using that money to pay staff, then you can end up in a situation where there's nothing left, right? And you've paid your staff, but you don't have enough really to survive on. And I think that we can talk about venture capital funded businesses, but I don't want to center on that, because I know that most people don't raise venture capital, right? They have bootstrapped businesses, they have small to medium-sized businesses, they're taking bank loans, and once you've paid back the bank and you've paid your staff, you might not have anything left. So if you're at that, and also I wanted to talk about the market, making sure that, I think you spoke about ideas. There may be a gap in the market, but not necessarily a market in the gap. So being very, very clear about, is there really a market here is really important. But that takes you back to what do you really want? You can run a business, only 4% of businesses, even in America, make more than $1 million a year in revenue. So that means that most entrepreneurs, their entire revenue is like one of these Afrexim Bank executive salary. Anyway, the entire revenue. So that's the state of most businesses. And if you want a small business, then that's the kind of money you're going to make for the rest of your life. And you're going to pay staff out of that money. So if that's what you want, that's a different thing from what my chairman here that raised millions want, right? They want a highly scalable business where, they will probably reach $1 billion. But that is a lot more stressful. And the risk of failure is higher than just sitting with your shop, sitting with your store, maybe having 2 or 3 restaurants or something like that. And, you have time for your family, you have a few staff, maybe 10, 20. So you've got to decide what you really want to achieve. And I'm going to talk about the 3, when you get to that stage where you want to change, what are the things to think about? Number 1, there's never any shame in carrying your CV and giving it to Odi from Afrexim. Look, sometimes you get to a stage in this entrepreneurship journey where you say, enough is enough, I want my life back. Try and give investors what you can give them, but it's not the hill to die on. There's no shame in going to a Google or a Facebook or a Microsoft that will pay you $100,000 unencumbered per year and just saying, look, I'm tired of that. So that's the first route. The second route is, press on with the same idea. Let's make it work. Let's try something like the same business, but you're pressing on in the same business. You're trying to find more customers. That one is a struggle, but you might be lucky. So we invested in a company that was really, really struggling with the diagnostics business, man. They just weren't getting enough blood tests. They weren't just getting enough x-rays. And the guy was ready to even sell it to us. Unluckily for me, COVID came, and they had a molecular lab. That was one of the only molecular labs in Nigeria. So they started doing COVID testing. Little did they know that there would come a time that every single person that flies out of Nigeria, like literally 300 people in a Boeing 737 times 20 flights going out of Nigeria would need a COVID test. They're charging $100 per test. Now he doesn't want to sell the business anymore. So sometimes pressing on is an issue because the market factors might change. And then there's pivoting. So I don't like Apple. I don't own a single Apple product. This is a Samsung, my reliable friend. Samsung actually was a fish business. So they were into the business of fisheries. They were selling fish. And obviously the fishing business can only take you so far. So they went into phones and electronics, and that's where they made their money. I think they're making like 10% of South Korea's GDP from Samsung. They have Samsung Hospital, Samsung Funeral. In fact, somebody said that you can live your whole life in South Korea through Samsung. You can be born in a Samsung hospital, use a Samsung phone, and even your funeral home will end up with Samsung. So they went from selling fish to like selling everything, and they executed a pivot like Laurie described, where they pivoted. So those are the kind of things that you can do. I think I described the executive route, no shame in that. I described the entrepreneurship.
Jean-Claude and Dr. Ola have spoken about entrepreneurship in ways that could frighten people. But what you don't know is that they are making serious money in this entrepreneurship that they're trying to tell you to run away from. Dr. Ola has invested companies of up to $350 million, right? You've raised. Jean-Claude, almost $40 million, if I'm correct.
Not quite, no.
37?
Something like that.
Okay, so what is it?
But so, I just want to be clear about these numbers, right? Because it's actually really important to differentiate. So the $350 million is the value of the portfolio of companies that Dr. Ola's company has invested in. You know, like it's very important to, and the number you're quoting for Laurie, which is 20 plus, is the amount of money that our investors have put into Laurie to allow us to build this. Okay, so you are right that we're being very down on entrepreneurship, but I actually like this approach to speaking to youth about entrepreneurship and being very down initially, because the reality is that 90+% fail. So I'd rather you know, give some real talk and allow entrepreneurs that are kind of doing it for the fun or for the hype to sort of walk away and go be an executive at AfricSim and live a much happier life than entrepreneurship, right? No.
I understand that, and I think that it has value as well. I think that it's good to look at things with two lenses. So it's like, this could happen, but this could also happen. My point was to say that despite this exists. So I would like us to conclude just by saying, just
what the upside? Yeah. Okay.
It's like, it's hard. The people, businesses fail. The numbers are not looking good. You don't have time for your wife, your children, your spouse, your partner, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're solving serious issues. You have people who are believing in you and investing money into your business. You know, so just to is there like a closing remark? Just
yeah.
What keeps you going? How does the next generation of entrepreneurs, this generation of entrepreneurs, how do they keep going? How do they stay inspired and stay motivated? How do they keep hope alive despite the reality of entrepreneurship, which is that, you know, it's, you know? So just 30 seconds, 1 minute, and we can wrap up. I think Dr. Ola can start because she's smiling.
Okay, so how do you keep hope alive as an entrepreneur? I think you keep hope alive, for me, like, I'm going to be maybe a little bit controversial here because I heard like, oh, you know, follow your passion. And I'm very, very passionate about yoga. But I know that the most that I can probably collect from somebody for an hour of teaching yoga is like $150, and that will not pay my bill, and that will not fuel my plane. So it's better that I do something that maybe I'm less passionate about than yoga, but at least it's going to give me the lifestyle that I want. So sometimes it's okay to keep your passion for a weekend and focus on something that is a big market. Aliko Dangote is the richest man in Africa, and he sells cement. It's not an interesting business, right? It's a really boring business. I'm not sure that that's the thing that he's most passionate about, but that is something that was a huge market in Nigeria. We're importing all our cement, and he started making it locally. Cement, he sells rice, he sells pasta. It's very difficult to be passionate about all those things. They're very normal things. But he makes a lot of money from them. So I think the best thing to do as an entrepreneur is maybe really think seriously about the market you are entering and make sure that there's money inside the market. Because even if you're doing something, if I was teaching yoga, I would have lost the passion by now. Because the money in that yoga is not that much. So you've got to do something that you can bear doing, but also that you can see some cash flow from it that will keep on motivating you. Because if you're not making money, the banks will hate you, investors will hate you, and even if you're doing something that is you're very passionate about, like you might not get the support from everybody because you're not making cash flow. So try and find something that you're good at, you're skilled at, and is in a big market, and maybe like me, keep the passion for the weekend.
Thank you.
Okay, for closing, I'd like to come from a different perspective. Now, while she was talking, if you were to summarize it, she was basically making reference to the success factor. What are you going to classify as success at the end of the day? And now that's the tricky part. Success can be very deceptive. So while our moderator was throwing out the numbers, you hear the millions that people have raised and all that, you begin to think, wow, it must be a glorious life. And now that's the danger here. You need to stay humble. You make your first $1 million, you have no business with a Rolls Royce. You need to scale. You need to keep doing what you do and make sure that at the end of the day, this life or this business is sustainable. Sustainability is key. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really good. So 5 years ago, I was living in New York City. I was working at Google, and my life was pretty sweet. Like, honestly, it was awesome. The part that was not awesome is that deep down inside of me, I knew that I was not doing what I knew I really wanted to do, which was, since being a kid, I wanted to build a technology company on the continent. I'm from Togo, I grew up in Togo, and that's what I wanted to do, right? And so 3 years back, I quit my job at Google, I quit New York, and I moved to Kenya to build this company. Now, the biggest motivator to doing that, I can tell you right now, was not to get rich. Because if the purpose was I think it's really important to ask yourself what you're passionate about. It sounds like making money is one passion. Yoga might be a lesser passion. Building technology on the continent was mine, right? And so I'm doing what I feel very strongly about, and I'm hoping that our company and our team will be very successful. The thing that gets me going or keeps me going is our team, is seeing the young men and women that join our company, that learn something and that help us in building something that we collectively feel is going to have major impact. And if we're successful in doing good, in achieving the mission that we set out, which is to lower the cost of goods by digitizing logistics on the continent, if we do that, then we know we'll also do well. If we do that, we know we'll also do well because we've structured the company in a way where we own pieces of the company and we will do well if we achieve the mission. But the purpose itself wasn't and isn't getting rich, because the chances of that are forgot to the side. Yeah, thank you. Daniel?
Yes, so 100% just want to re-emphasize what has already been said multiple times, which is money should not be your motivator for being an entrepreneur. If your purpose to being an entrepreneur is to make a lot of money, you've got it the wrong way around, right? Your purpose is to solve a problem in a market, and if you do that, then you'll make money. The amount of money you'll make is directly proportional to how big that market is. right? And it's okay to go after different sized markets. If your goal is to be a restaurateur and you want to open a pizza place in a town that doesn't have a pizza place, you can make money doing that because you're solving a need in that market, right? If you're doing something that is huge in its scope, you know, you're trying to build a whole new payment system to address the use of cash or the lack of financing across Africa, and you actually solve that problem, you actually build a solution that works, you will make a huge amount of money doing it. Obviously, it's a much, much, much more risky proposition to try to go after that size of problem because many people have tried. You know, it's still not clear how many have actually succeeded. And so there's different levels of risks involved depending on the market that you tackle and your proposed solution for it. But at the end of the day, you have to start by solving a problem in a market. And if you do that well, then you can potentially make money from it, but that should never be the motivating factor for why you're actually doing what you're doing.
So thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your knowledge and your wisdom. It's been an insightful session, and I'm wondering if anyone has questions. We can take 2 or 3 if time permits. So if there's anyone in the question, okay, I can see one hand. Can I have another hand so we can just, she's over there, if you can get her a microphone. If you have any question that you would like any of the panelists to address. Thank you. Okay. So we have 3 people. So please, I'd like to advise that you keep your questions short so we can, you know, wrap up in good time. Thank you. So we'll start from here, okay? Then we'll come back to you. So we have him and we have her. And then thank you.
Good afternoon. Okay, I have one question. We are talking about, I still strongly believe that many of those people who are striving in this domain, especially in the agribusiness domain, there are people who probably they have never had an occasion to sit like this and talk about entrepreneurship, talk about bankability and all these stuffs, because I know very rich people in my community who are controlling a lot of money, but they know nothing about entrepreneurship. And over the last 10 years, we've been talking a lot about entrepreneurship, but when I still compare the strength, these guys, they still keep controlling the market. So to me, sometimes I feel like it's really a huge loss when we keep talking about entrepreneurship. The question is just like to my sister who is coming from Nigeria, I'm coming from Cameroon as well. There's usually this belief that we say if I want to make money, there is this black part of entrepreneurship which nobody knows. Probably I have to consult somebody to become very rich or do things the wrong way to become very rich. So what is your take on that? I really want to know that. Is it something that we should bank on too? Because these guys are actually succeeding. When you look around, you see tele-prophets who within 2 years they are making billions, they are buying jet planes. You see the Muslims in the extreme north that they are carrying money everywhere in the airport.
Doctor, but you can address the question, which is an actual medical doctor.
I think the question was around integrity in business. And in Nigeria, and I'm sure in Cameroon, there's a lot of people with really bad, unethical business practices that seem to be doing really well. And there's a lot of people that are doing things the right way that don't seem to be doing very well. Was that your question?
I think he was asking was that your question? I think he was asking about like people who consult prophets, is that it? Yes, and that's why I was very clear to say that you're a medical doctor.
Oh,
so people who consult doctors, prophets to become successful, now what is your take on it?
So in terms of, you know, people that consult these kind of people, I honestly think there's no scientific backing for that. I think what maybe happens when people go to these people is it makes their self-belief higher. And maybe that's why you see them becoming successful. But there's no, like, America is the richest country in the world, right? And European countries are far richer than Africa. If these things were working, honestly, I would have packaged it and tried to export it out. But, you know, it obviously doesn't work if we've remained poor despite all of these things. I think real, genuine value creation is the only way to sustainable wealth. Having a product or having something that people need and that generates money. Please don't forget this. You can only raise VC money by telling a story. Any other type of money that you're going to a traditional commercial bank, you need to show your balance sheet. That is the truth. No, like, I don't know if you have these banks, but the GT banks, the Stanbics, all of these things, UBA, can you go there and tell a good story? You can't now. You have to present your cash. How much cash are you making? That's the truth. And the reality of entrepreneurship for most people in this room is not VC. It's going to the bank. And if you go to the bank without revenue, no matter how good your story is, even if you're a Nobel Prize winning literature person, they're not going to give you money. Because a banker, in order to extend credit to you, needs to know what he's doing. Like, he needs to see an off-taker, or he needs to see your cash flows, not a story. So that's why I spoke about the difference between doing what you're passionate about, finding a sort of confluence between what you're passionate about and what actually makes money. Because if you only do what you're passionate about, when you go to the banker and show him your statement of account and it's not attractive, he cannot, like, the structures in a traditional bank cannot allow him to extend credit to you if the business is failing. Whereas in VC, of course, with my VC hat on, of course, a large problem, big market, come, we'll give you money. But that's not going to be the story for a lot of people, because a lot of people are not building technology companies. They're building companies that you have to go to the bank, or you have to go to a traditional institution to get cash, or a microfinance bank even. And that's a very, very different story from VC. So I'm saying, look, spiritual things maybe can give self-belief, can give confidence, but, and that's important for entrepreneurs. But and you're talking about unethical business practices as well. It doesn't scale. Circa before this time now, like when I met Kenny Tete, the CEO, there were lots of people trying to do this FSPO, lots of people in the oil and gas industry, lots of people that have bought planes. I don't see any of them today, right? It's people that did business with integrity that still stand the test of time, and you can still see them on panels today. None of those people that were around are around today. So the only way it has to be real value creation that stands the test of time, and his business is a testament to that, integrity. And that's why I think he talks so much about trust, right?
To that, from a different perspective again. So this question you ask speaks to something that's very crucial within the African context, which is learning, knowledge building. So based on what you know and how much you've developed yourself, no one should be able to sway you. You know what is right and what is wrong. So yes, these guys have gone X way and in quotes they are successful, but then they are not sustainable. And based on what you know, as you continue to open your mind to learn new things and unlearn the old ones that aren't working for you, you get the conviction you need to be in business, knowing that based on this issue I'm trying to solve, your commercial awareness, you're going to break through, all things being equal. Thank you.
I'd like to take your question and her question at the same time, and just 30 seconds each, please, so we can have 1 minute to answer, so we can wrap up. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, it's working. Thank you.
Bonsoir. Moi, je parle en français. Je ne sais pas s'il y a des gens qui comprennent le français. Voilà. Je me présente au nom de Zayabade Umenasara. Je viens du Niger. Je suis l'entrepreneur. Je suis promotrice de l'entreprise d'Adi Local. Tout à l'heure, même si je ne comprends pas tout, on peut que rencontre les entrepreneurs. Bon, moi, je pense que quand on dit l'entrepreneuriat, déjà, on a l'idée, on s'attend à beaucoup de difficultés, surtout pour un début. Nous, en particulier au Niger, notre problème, c'est la banque.
Thank you. So you would take that in 1 second. Can I just have your question? So.
Parce que nous, les jeunes, d'abord, quand tu crées une entreprise, la banque te dérange de créer un compte de l'entreprise à part ton compte personnel. Maintenant, une fois que le compte de l'entreprise est créé, tu es toujours taxé. Parce qu'en 2018, il y a une loi de finances chez nous. Dès que tu as un compte de l'entreprise, tu es toujours taxé, je ne sais pas, par jour ou par mois. À part ça, quand tu prends un crédit à la banque, il y a le taxe de l'État, à part le taxe de ton compte, il y a leur pourcentage. Du coup, même les grands entrepreneurs préfèrent aller fabriquer leurs produits ailleurs, par exemple en Chine, pour amener au Niger. Parce qu'ils ont un problème, ils ont peur d'être taxés. On est beaucoup taxés, ça nous décourage. Ça décourage beaucoup les entrepreneurs. Donc, je pense que ce problème, ça c'est un problème, le premier problème qui décourage les jeunes entrepreneurs. La banque, les taxes. Est-ce que Afrimix Bank, je ne sais pas, peut faire quelque chose pour les jeunes entrepreneurs africains pour faciliter, pour encourager les jeunes entrepreneurs africains par rapport à ça? Parce que nous, chez nous... Ok.
Pardon me? Oh, let's have the second question so we see if we can answer both in good time. Thank you. Maybe you can just speak to that. Yeah.
Hello? Okay, so just to repeat the question, so the young lady is from Niger, I believe, and was explaining that in her country, entrepreneurs often have to deal with basically bad banking. So they are required to have personal and business bank accounts, and there's often tax on that. So a lot of entrepreneurs end up dealing directly with other countries, if you will, to be banked. And so her specific question was whether Afrixim Bank could propose a solution for young entrepreneurs so that they're able to remove this first obstacle. So she has walked away, so I'll continue in English and maybe answer her in French directly after the panel. But this is obviously a very real problem, and I think in large part the reason why Afrixim has sponsored such an event and is as involved in entrepreneurship as they are is because they believe they are proposing or offering a solution to banking in entrepreneurship. But I do want to echo the point that she's made in that it doesn't have to be in Niger or with young entrepreneurs. Lori, Soko Watch, and a number of other supposedly successful startups on the continent have a nightmare of a time banking on the continent. And it is something that we also look to Afrixim Bank and other banks to solve, right? There is a basic problem around just getting a line of credit in less than 6 months. And that is just no way to build a company. That is no way to build a business. Since the invention of credit in like the 2nd century, it has been the fundamental way of building companies. And on the continent, let alone private loans, business loans are impossible to get for the highest promised companies in the land. And so we need to solve that. Et mademoiselle, je vais répondre à votre question directement après la session. Mais vous avez complètement raison qu'on a besoin de meilleures solutions en banque. Et c'est un problème même pour les entrepreneurs comme nous. Donc je compatis avec votre problème.
Thank you so much. So let's have you.
Allô? Mon ami a déjà parlé en français, donc je continue, s'il vous plaît, voilà. Je suis Assamoah Flora, originaire de la Côte d'Ivoire. Vous avez relevé les points des problèmes que rencontrent les entrepreneurs. Mais moi, je voudrais savoir, la mission réelle d'un entrepreneur, c'est quoi? C'est se faire de l'argent ou aider sa société. Parce qu'on remarque que les entrepreneurs, ils entreprennent pour eux. Ils créent des activités pour se développer, pour avoir de l'argent. Mais en Afrique, notre réel problème, c'est que on voit qu'il y a des personnes qui sont très riches et des personnes qui sont très pauvres. Nous avons besoin, certes, d'entrepreneurs, mais nous avons besoin de relever le niveau, l'indice de développement de l'Afrique. Il ne s'agit pas de développer seulement une classe sociale et puis le reste, bon, ça reste en bas. Je vais essayer d'être courte, comme il a dit, on est pris par le temps. Mais il se trouve que chaque matin, en allant chez moi au travail, je quitte dans une maison où il y a la peinture, chacun a sa maison, indépendamment, mais je passe dans un quartier où des maisons sont collées. C'est-à-dire, on a à peine même le temps de circuler, à peine de l'espace pour circuler. Il faudrait que nous, jeunes entrepreneurs, nous ne voyons pas seulement le côté argent culturel, nous devons plutôt aider l'Afrique à se développer. Il ne faudrait pas qu'on cherche seulement de l'argent, mais on doit relever le niveau, voilà, de développement de l'Afrique. C'est très important. C'est tout. Voilà, c'est vraiment un point que je voudrais souligner parce qu'on parle d'entrepreneuriat, mais l'Afrique souffre. L'Afrique souffre parce que les pauvres sont très pauvres et ils sont nombreux. Les pauvres en Afrique sont plus nombreux que les riches. C'est un fait qui fait très mal. Du coup, c'est un cri de cœur que je lance, que nous et vous aussi, qui nous encadrez pour devenir des entrepreneurs de demain, vous nous aidez à savoir orienter nos projets. Pas seulement pour avoir de l'argent pour nous-mêmes, mais pour que toute l'Afrique soit au même niveau. On ne peut pas tous certes être au même niveau, mais que les conditions de vie soient vraiment améliorées. C'est le point que je voulais relever. Merci.
Okay. Over to you. Sure. So the question and the point that the young entrepreneur was making was, I think, about the relationship between entrepreneurship and poverty. And the point she was making is that the continent has huge disparities between rich and poor, and that the poor far outnumber the rich. And it was less of a question than the point that entrepreneurship has to find a way to more than make individuals rich, lift up the continent as a whole. And again, wholeheartedly, de tout cœur, je suis d'accord avec vous. I wholeheartedly agree. I think a lot of us would say the same, right? And when we talk about entrepreneurship being about solving big problems, about just even access and availability of goods. So, I mean, I think it's a perfect point to close on, which is that, yes, entrepreneurship is about more than making yourself rich individually. You know, if we do things right, we should be solving really big problems for a lot of people, and perhaps in the process we can make a few bucks for ourselves.
Thank you so much. That is real impact. Impact is not just, you know, having money, but uplifting the people and uplifting your community. So thank you. We have come to the end of this session.
Before we close, I'll just address the question about Afreximbank's interventions and JC's very subtle point that it's not just the young entrepreneurs that are affected by the funding gap. It's also even the scale-ups, right? So you're exactly correct. That is why we, as an institution, are now prioritizing the SME and youth entrepreneurship constituencies, because we see the promise, but we also understand the gaps in the market, and obviously financing is one of them. Fundamentally, we need to rethink the credit assessment methodologies that are used for you guys. It's as simple as that. We cannot be looking at your young businesses with the same lenses that we use to lend to established corporates. So we understand that, we buy into that. We have now developed a substantive program to try and address that gap. And that program touches on not just young startups, but also scale-ups and what we are calling emerging corporates as well. The good news is that technology now allows us to think about things differently, right? So I think the specific solution to solving the credit gap is one that we need to think about together. So as bankers, we have our priorities, but you guys are the ones who understand the technology best. You know, we are looking to all of you to innovate around our pain points so that it becomes easier based on technology-driven solutions for us to be able to deploy capital into small businesses. We all need to think about risk differently, you know. But I guess the point I want to make is that we need your help in doing that as far as developing tech-enabled, innovative, alternative credit models is concerned. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Odi, and a good way to wrap. Thank you all so much, and that's it. Thank you. Yeah, we can have a picture.
harvest losses and 70% lost all their income.
Centuries, because of poverty and systemic exclusion, has helped them build resilience even during this pandemic.
We've faced a number of challenges like everyone else, one of them being that we were unable to travel to the farm as often as we usually do. That means we're not able to fully supervise some of the operations like quality control of how the fruits are handled, how they're shined, how they're sorted, how they're packed, how the apple chips are dried in the solar dryers. We were also unable to bring in as many fruits to the city center to sell as we usually do because transport was even more expensive than it usually is.
I am a member of One Africa, championing blue economy. So my company supplies seafood to hotels, restaurants and supermarkets. But due to the impact of COVID on the hotelier industry, I have lost 80% of my income and I have to close down my operation for the month of April. Now, in the meanwhile, I have decided to re-strategize my business model and diversify into offering fishery products to end-user consumers in and around Windhoek. And secondly, I have also intensified our online presence. So with this, we have really gained momentum in gaining new clients. So we are negotiating with 10 clients in rural areas who want us to supply them with fishery products. I would like to urge government and funding institutions to support us with financial means in order for us to maintain our businesses and maintain our cash flows and be able to survive during this period of COVID.
Today, after the pandemic, the new normal requires that African governments, international development partners, to change their mindset and strategy to prioritize and focus on women and youth economic empowerment for rural transformation.
You cannot sweep through Intra-African trade without boosting agribusiness, which is where organizations like AWAN do come in. We do admire what they are doing on the continent. We see them as a role model. I want to urge them to continue to do this.
We are going to engage with AWAN because part of our mandate is really to engage with the private sector.
The Africa we want must overpower the Africa we don't.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, can I encourage you to please take your seats? The next session is going to commence very shortly. It's an extremely important discussion. We're looking at agribusiness. We're looking at the agribusiness sector. Insights and opportunities for young startups in the business sector. Obviously, agribusiness is one of the most important areas of youth entrepreneurship on the continent. So finding solutions for the problems and the gaps that exist in that ecosystem are critical to this sort of meeting. So we do have a stellar panel, and we're expecting to have an extremely insightful discussion. So can I encourage you all to come back, take your seats as we get ready. Thank you. All right, so maybe we can kick off with the video as a starting point.
For centuries, human muscles, mostly from rural women, have dominated Africa's farm power.
It is unacceptable that in the 21st century, 7% of labor in agriculture is still by women. This is now changing. At One Africa, we're economically empowering women and youth in agribusiness.
One Africa.
This is my team. They are our trailblazers across 42 African countries. At One Africa, we upgrade their skills in addressing their knowledge gaps in different sectors. In financial literacy, we provide also information on market access. We provide information on trade and rules of trade, continentally and globally. Through our eHub platform, we provide online information on innovation and new technology in agriculture. For instance, soil testing by drones, and also new production techniques on the market. For instance, aeroponics, hydroponics.
However, all the gains made in the past have been shattered. According to the impact assessment of COVID-19 pandemic on our One Africa members, 91% lost revenue, 16% experienced reduced production, 45% faced post-harvest losses, and 70% lost all their income.
The resilience of an African rural woman, built through centuries because of poverty and systemic exclusion, has helped them build resilience even during this pandemic.
We've faced a number of challenges like everyone else, one of them being that we were unable to travel to the farm as often as we usually do. That means we're not able to fully supervise some of the operations like quality control of how the fruits are handled, how they're shined, how they're sorted, how they're packed, how the apple chips are dried in the solar dryers. We were also unable to bring in as many fruits to the city center to sell as we usually do because transport was even more expensive than it usually is.
I am a member of our One Africa, championing blue economy. So my company supplies seafood to hotels, restaurants, and supermarkets. But due to the impact of COVID on the hotelier industry, I have lost 80% of my income and I have to close down my operation for the month of April. Now, in the meanwhile, I have decided to re-strategize my business model and diversify into offering fishery products to end-user consumers in and around Windhoek. And secondly, I have also intensified our online presence. So with this, we have really gained momentum in gaining new clients. So we are negotiating in rural areas who want us to supply them with fishery products. I would like to urge government and funding institutions to support us with financial means in order for us to maintain our businesses and maintain our cash flows and be able to survive during this period of COVID.
Today, after the pandemic, the new normal requires that African governments, international development partners, to change their mindset and strategy to prioritize and focus on women and youth economic empowerment for rural transformation.
Recording in progress.
You cannot triple Intra-African trade without boosting agribusiness, which is where organizations like AWAN do come in. We do admire what they are doing on the continent. We see them as a role model. I want to urge them to continue to do this.
We are going to engage with AWAN because part of our mandate is really to engage with the private sector.
The Africa we want must overpower the Africa we don't.
Fantastic. That was a brilliant video from AWAN Africa. You will see that we are blessed to have with us the anchor of that video, Miss Beatrice Gakuba, businesswoman, senior expert, and a visionary leader in the area in Africa. Can we put our hands together for Miss Makuba, please, who will be managing, who will be moderating this session. The session is co-organized by the AE Trade Group, USAU, and of course, AWAN Africa. And we are pleased to have you here to listen to this discussion. So without taking any more time, I'm going to hand the reins over to Ms. Gakuba to facilitate the session. Ms. Gakuba, over to you.
Everyone, I hope there is more youth now come to join us, because this session is really targeting young startup who want to and who have decided or who have an intention to make agriculture a business. So with that taking time, I would like to welcome Mr. Ali from the U.S. Embassy. He will introduce himself later. Please welcome, sir. I would like to also welcome Marusizi Zondi from the KZN, who is President of Business Black Empowerment Business of KZN. I don't know if the person is there, so maybe, okay, maybe he or she will be joining us in a few minutes. I would also like to welcome Eva, who is our champion in Namibia. She is under 30, and I think the youth here will be able to. Toko Sizi, I will apologize if I'm not getting the name right. Please, we're very happy to have somebody from not far away, from 4 hours from KZN, who had decided to come and join us and share your experiences in from South Africa. Welcome, sir. And I would like also to call upon Richard from Togo, who is specialized in agri-technology. Please welcome Richard. So I think we have enough, I have enough on the panel, so welcome. MC, please notify us when the other panelists will come to join. You, Mr. Malusi, please join. Thank you. Thank you very much, all of you. I can see again, there's something that I've seen through these panels for the last few days we've been here, that unfortunately there are more men on the panel than women. So I'm asking myself why this question. So I hope the young ladies and the women who are in the audience will be able to, when we reach the Q&A, to stand up and increase the volume of your voice in the matters of entrepreneurship and startup in agribusiness. So in order to be able to give more time to the question and answers, I would like to start first with Mr. Ali, and then will be followed up by our host, Mr. Malusi, who will say something about the business entrepreneurship and agribusiness in the KwaZulu-Natal, and what we will take it from here and what you can offer the continent in terms of collaboration. Mr. Ali, please be brief and tell us what the USA is doing for us. You have the floor, sir.
Much. It's an honor to be here with you, and I'm especially grateful to be among the youth. So that's great. That's a great feeling. I won't tell you my age or anything, but I'm with you. My name is Ali Abdi. I'm the agricultural counselor at the U.S. Embassy in Pretoria. My office represents the U.S. Department of Agriculture in the Southern Africa region. We, of course, work in the agricultural area in terms of facilitating trade, both to the U.S. and from the U.S., production of agriculture. Also, of course, this is an important area for cooperation in terms of the broad U.S. government engagement with Africa, and we support that. Of course, the AU has multiple different engagements with relevant agencies from the U.S. government. I work for one of those agencies, and that's the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So with that, I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Madam. Thank you.
Malusi Zondi, am I pronouncing very wrong? We are very happy to have you here, sir, with us. And for what I know, I have read, is that this area and going up in Eastern Cape is the agriculture area of the country, this beautiful country of yours. Please convey our thanks and our, especially to the youth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Malus Zondi. I'm the president of Black Business Federation. It's a national organization that represents Black African businesses, but not only in the sector of agribusiness. In the value chain, we've got different sectors, but in particular here, we are speaking about agriculture, but we represent mass number of different businesses, including women, youth, and people living with disability. But firstly, I must begin by welcoming you all. We highly appreciate, especially because we've got an old youth with us. So we highly appreciate. No, from a perspective of a Black Business Federation, we have taken it to our hands to say, there shall be no oppression in any way. Because it's not only about opportunities that are here, tangible in our eyes as young people, but it's about beneficiation and access to opportunities. There are lots of opportunities that are named, particularly in the stream of KwaZulu-Natal. As you can see, we've got a numerous number of land, which of course the monarch of KwaZulu-Natal is controlled by the chief, of which for us to speak about agribusiness, firstly, we must understand the ownership part. We can speak about us becoming at least owners and means of production, owning by the people, by young people. But the fundamental question is the target market, of which us as Black Business Federation, it has been an instrument to make sure that we lobby, we advocate, and we change the policies which are unfriendly towards us as young people, as women, youth, and people living with disability, getting access to opportunities. So as an organization, we are proud to say, KwaZulu-Natal, we have at least, because when you speak about businesses in a hierarchy level, you will find that there are business people who are there, who are owning the value chain, but who are monopolizing the system. And they will never allow young people to embark on opportunities simply because it's competition. But you'll also find young people who are intellectually clear, who've got skills, but they are treated only as laborers. So we as Business Federation, we motivate young people to become proper business people, but when they are in business, you will find there is no access in capital, you will find that there is no access in land, you will find that there is no access within the streamline of trading, exports or imports. So our role is to make sure that we unlock all the red tapes, is to unlock all the unfriendly policies towards young people in particular. So the agribusiness space plays a very huge fundamental role in growing our GDP in KwaZulu-Natal. As you have seen, we have been affected by COVID-19. You couldn't find food anywhere. I'm telling you now. And people got rich in 3 days. Immediately got rich. But the question is, who are those people? Who is the majority? It's us as black Africans. But those people who are owning land, the means of production, they will eliminate you because they are strictly eliminating their competition. You will find that our brothers, our sisters, young people in particular, when they are doing agribusiness, they only do for the markets that is informal, which is not fair. Then you will find big corporates getting to townships, getting to rural areas, but creating malls, and they do not have access to the markets, of which those are the responsibilities, therefore, of us as young people, to champion the interest of young people, to unite as black Africans, and to make sure that we fight against all the unnecessary policies that are not user-friendly towards us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think it is, yeah. Thank you very much for that description. I think it shows the challenges that exist in the sector, and particularly in the context of KwaZulu-Natal and South Africa, which is actually related to your history. And I think the Federation is doing a good job in addressing. I think they say when you address the problem, when you clearly see the problem, the solutions are already there. So we'll be very, very coming back to you, sir, because this is very inspirational. We have same forms of challenges on the continent, but it comes in different glasses and costumes, so we'll come back to us. Mr. Msokozi, am I pronouncing your name well? You are a practitioner, and you just heard Mr. Mulusi. What is your say in this as a practitioner and a young practitioner? There are opportunities. What are you seeing?
Thank you very much. I would like to greet everyone in this afternoon. My colleague here, we're coming from the same province, and we are on the same space, and we are advocating for more or less the same thing. I'm in an agricultural space as a young youth, since there is an old youth. I've never been employed. I choose to focus more on agribusiness. That's how that when and where I saw that I should go to school just to study agriculture, even though it has been labeled as one of those industries that you don't even need to go to school. And you will see that most people in schools, more especially our youth, or I would say it was an undermined industry that you could even study for. But as youth of this time, we chose to go for agriculture. Actually, I forsaked chemical engineering for agriculture. When I chose my studies, I had 2 choices to do this or this. Why I did that is because I had that understanding, as young as I am, that agriculture needs more youth, more especially of color. When I say of color, I'm talking about the previously disadvantaged ones. If I can say, locally in South Africa, it has been known that people, some particular group are monopolizing the space, and you find our people not having a space either to operate or even to have a niche to try. When you try as a small business and then you immediately fall, once you're starting to pick up, and then because there are elephants in the house. But now we are aggressively so and unapologetic because you want to occupy the space as well. We are not taking anybody out of the industry, but as youth, and understanding that our forefathers and older people are aging, and who will be occupying the space, because we all want anything fashionable, any faculty fashionable. You can talk about chemical engineering or any space other than agriculture. Hence, I chose agriculture. I'm in a space of business. I had an opportunity to go to USA because of precision farming. I was based in MA State. I had an opportunity to go to China in Beijing in a seminar on application of agricultural biotechnologies in developing countries. I was standing for South Africa there. And then I came back home and then I started business. It was not easy, but we were able, working with my partners, we have a farm in KZN producing sugarcane. It's a commercial farm. And then we had 32 channel producing tomatoes and cucumber as well. And then recently we occupied a space in Mpumalanga where we're working with the Department of Agriculture as youth. In terms of, we actually established a grain milling plant there. We're producing super maize meal, thereby providing market for our farmers, more especially in Mpumalanga, starting locally, and then we can go abroad of saying that we can take your maize, but not only taking your maize, we provide technical aspect on how can you produce the good quality maize that we want in order to produce our super maize meal. We have supplied our super maize meal locally. We feed it in schools in Mpumalanga. Our children are eating it. We already took it to Zimbabwe, in Swaziland as well. But over and above that, we occupied a space in Josine as well, whereby we said as youth, we will want to be part of making sure that we have our own of occupying the space of producing the means of production. You can talk about seed. So there are programs in KZN, agronomic seed and mega nurseries. We occupied it working with the Provincial Department of Agriculture, saying that as a youth that is in a space of agribusiness, we want to be there, we want to work with you to ensure that we have seeds, our own seeds, because we're having a problem, not only in South Africa, but in Africa, of saying that we don't own means of production. They normally say haphazardly so that another world war won't be with the guns or won't be with the injection or vaccine, if they call it, but it will be through the seeds, because that's what we need for us to eat. If we don't own means of production, then anybody who owns means, who is having the seed, will withhold the seed, and then we will see how we get food, which is the core, because the agricultural sector contributes a lot in terms of either our GDP or in our livelihood. Every day in the morning, you need something to eat. During the day, you have lunch. We never thought, even if you are not in the agriculture space, we never thought, what am I eating? Where does it come from? In the afternoon, we need something. Maybe even before you sleep, if you sleep late, you'll need something to snack. Then where does all these things come from? From agriculture. So that's why we are unapologetic and aggressive in the space of agriculture. We are in the forefront as youth so that we don't actually disappoint those who are looking to us. We are actually saying that let us as youth occupy the space of agribusiness. Thank you.
The word unapologetic and assertive and aggressive, because obviously this is one of the important sector, not only for growing our GDP, but also is a question of food security. And we know that food security is linked to national security, and with the poverty and the background, we see what is happening to our continent. So I'm really happy to hear that, and please remain unapologetic. Richard, the organizers of this session called it changing the narrative. At One Africa, we say the face of agriculture the future face of agriculture on the continent is youth. Now, you are in agri-tech space. How is it, please, in a few minutes, explain to us how is agri-tech is going to contribute to changing the narrative? What is going to happen when the youth are bringing agri-technology in the rural area on the continent that we still have to transform? Please go.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here and to be able to participate into this panel with brilliant people, as you can see. So I'm from Togo. My name is Richard Foley, and I'm the founder of a company called the African Geospatial Intelligence Agency. And some of you can wonder what geospatial technology is doing in agriculture. I want just to go back a little bit to state that, in Africa, we know that our parents or our grandparents were able, for example, to look at the sky in the morning to say that, oh, today is going to rain, or to even predict the season. They can also look at the movement of some birds to predict the season. Our farmers, they were able, for example, to look at the movements of some cricket and predict the level of soil moisture, for example. But unfortunately for us, the climate change is disrupting this know-how, and we as tech guys, we have to find a new way to provide the same information our parents were using to plan their sowing or the arrival of a new baby or even harvest. So as my brother here say, we are from the same fellowship, which is the Mandela Washington Fellowship. And through that fellowship, I was able to have a professional development experience at the NASA Marshall Space Flight Center. And my biggest surprise was that at NASA, they actually talk a lot about agriculture. And that's where geospatial technology comes in. So, for example, we can leverage the asset of technology to help our farmers, even from soil preparation, even to access to the market. So do at the African Geospatial Intelligence Agency is to leverage satellite data, for example, combined with big data analytics to predict climate for the smallholder farmers so that they can plan in advance how they are going to sow. But also, we can also provide them with soil information. What's the soil moisture level? What's the soil type? And what crop are you willing to grow on that soil? So if we can provide the farmers with those information before even they get started with their work, we are sure that they are not doing a guesswork. So actually, they will take advantage of their agricultural investment. So, but you know also that farmers are not working just alone. For example, they work with insurance company. So insurance companies can use the same information, and even banks, to assess a farmer's project. For example, you startup, if you go to a bank with agricultural project, they can use our service to assess your project and the area where you want to implement the project before they can continue something with you. So as you ask, the future of agriculture in Africa is bright if we are able to leverage the opportunities which are there through technology. So yeah, thanks so much.
You have a master's in environment, and you saw an opportunity. Please tell us what made you not go to look for a job as a young woman with your government in Namibia, in Windhoek, and decided to go into business. That opportunity, and what are the challenges now as a youth, and after hearing what your colleagues are saying, please share in a few minutes what are the opportunities and the challenges in that sector. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Beatrice, for the question. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eva Shitatala, and I come from Namibia. So, and as Beatrice narrated, I have experience in environmental consulting,
And so I work on different projects within Namibia. And then where I found myself actually working more on a project in specifically on blue economy and also managing oceanic resources. So for 7 years, I have worked in this industry. I worked across different aspects of resource management within the oceanic environment. And as time went by, I got to identify some of the challenges within the industry. So, but I also grew passionate about fish resources, not necessarily from the management aspect, but also from a consumption aspect. And this, I'm not sure if some of you in the audience actually love fish. I am a seafood lover, and having come from Namibia, this is one of the resources that we're actually blessed with. So it is something that I grew to love. And what I also found out is that I was not alone. There were also so many other people who actually love to eat seafood, but they didn't know where to get this seafood. So 2019, I founded a business called Zadiva Fishery Product. So we actually went through all the compliance and everything, but that's typical business operation or starting a business. So since then, we started actually supplying restaurants and also doing a little bit of B2C. And then time went by, and I think at the end 2019, beginning of 2020, we know that COVID came, interrupted obviously the hospitality industry. And this also affected what we actually did as a business, and we have to relook into our business model. And then with these, and then also combining part of my experience, we also know that there is a trend going on of looking into sustainable resource management. Also looking at that, we know that the future is not in the ocean, because of also we know that our resources are depleting due to climate change and overfishing on the continent as well. So we actually started as a company supplying also B2B establishments, so we do retail as well. And then with this, we pick up that actually there is demand, but yet the supply is not enough. So we started also looking into, while we are supplying, we started looking into the issues of aquaculture, because we know that the fish demand is going up. This is for various reasons. Also that many people are changing their diet. People are moving from eating red meat or chicken, looking into becoming pescatarians or vegetarians and so forth. And also that I'm not sure if you are following the trend that is happening right now with COP26. We also saw that there is going to be a tax imposed on meat products. So this is also somehow going to influence meat consumption and looking into alternative of other protein source, which is also fish. And I don't know about you, but from the background where I come from, people wouldn't stop eating meat. And so that means that fish production, or whichever way, that has to sort of like continue. So at the moment we are also selling fish, and at the same time we are looking into alternative of aquaculture and so on. But then when you look into the environment of aquaculture, is that there are several issues that are actually happening right now. We know that for people who are in the sector, they are trying to control production and monopolize production of fish or growing or farming fish. So what they do is that they sort of like control what output, like a female fish that can actually multiply and then grow for production. So this is also what we are working on onto our own breed, something that is acclimatized to the local environment that is able to grow. So yeah, thank you.
Mr. Ali, you and I have the background of delivering aid to the countries. And I guess have moved from the UN to go into the Apex, and you are still in that space of delivering aid or development project. What is it that we need to also re-engineer our thinking and how we deliver aid? We have to respond to the questions and the demands of our youth that is more educated and have access to information. I think there was a study from McKinsey that was saying that in 2023, half of the population of Africa will have own an Android phone. So for an educated young person all over the continent with an Android phone on their hand, I think they can do good things and also other things that we do not want to wish. So if you have to tell us how we change our mindset, re-engineer our thinking, and how to rethink and remodel our system of delivering aid, what will you suggest we do to enable, facilitate, coach, mentor these young people to be able to feed the continent? Because here now we're in the same sector.
Thank you, Beatrice. Very good question. Well, first let me say that when our president, President Biden, spoke at the African Union Summit in February this year, he affirmed his administration's commitment to both rebuilding our partnerships and including, of course, partnerships, especially with Africa, and growing trade and investment in a way that advances the prosperity of all countries. Now, we are at this event. This event, the focus is the youth, as you said. Now, USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, seeks to cooperate to find ways to support entrepreneurs in Africa. When we say entrepreneurs, I mean, as you said correctly, most of the population is young, and that's the generation that really is that has to be part of, in terms of targeting. So number one, we share the many aspirations and goals of the free trade, the the free trade agreement in Africa, the Africa Free Trade Agreement, the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. And we work in terms of regional engagements, bilateral, regional. When I say regional, meaning, for example, the AU, the African Union, who is, of course, supporting this event that we're at today. Bilateral cooperations with specific countries where we're located. For example, I'm in Southern African region, and we have programs that support capacity engagement and training. This morning, I was at the KwaZulu-Natal Poultry Training Institute. It's about, we were driving a little bit fast, but it took us about an hour and 20 minutes, almost, an hour, let's say, to get there. Now just as an example, the Training Institute provides training for youth, for young people who want to learn how to produce or get into business in the poultry sector. Everybody loves poultry, I'm sure of that. So, the skills that are necessary to raise poultry, to grow them, to breed them. It's a very small training institute, but the work they're doing, and we're, the U.S. It's the U.S. poultry industry is supporting that. We, as the U.S. Department of Agriculture, are supporting that. And the idea is to give people the skills they need so they can actually establish their own operations. To do it, you have to have the skills. You have to have the skill set. You can't just, one day decide, I'm going to be a poultry farmer. That's not going to work. You must have the knowledge and the skill set to do this as a business. And what I saw today, young people, who are doing that, not only from South Africa, but from the other countries in Africa as well. So I was really very excited to see that. That was my first visit to the center. The point I'm trying to get to is, the youth of today, they have a lot of tools to actually, they don't even need to go anywhere. They can get everything on their, in their phone. And because of COVID, we have seen how the workspace, the classrooms, everything has transformed to virtual. So there's a benefit in that, and that benefit is available. It just needs to be organized in a way that can benefit the people, the youth. And in the big picture, we as, U.S. government, of course, are supporting, are engaging with so many different levels, at the government level, provincial level, regional level, and multilateral level as well to support. So there is growing attention, there's growing interest, of course, to do more in that space. And so we seek to support, we're seeking to support ways that can harmonize the way, the operating environment. For example, in terms of regulation, harmonization of standards between the different countries. So all of these efforts are absolutely essential and beneficial. Thank you.
Mr. Zondi, you talked about value chains. You talked about the monopoly of the big companies. I think we have the same thing on the continent. We have a lot of multinationals that really have the monopoly of many things because they have the technology, they have the finance, and they have the knowledge. We also know that the average age of an African farmer is 60 years old. So it is going to be challenging for us to think that we are going to, to sustain that. We need to bring the youth into the picture. They have to go into the agriculture, in all the value chain, where the opportunities are. But I think one of the questions all of us are asking ourselves, maybe it's a bit different in South Africa, but on the rest of the continent, how do we encourage the young people to go into agribusiness when we have two big challenging issues? We have the issue of culture. We know all of us, including ourselves who have children here, that we rather see our children being doctors, economists, or anything else, but not agriculture. A few years ago, even now, it's still in the mind of most of their parents that if your child goes into agriculture, it means the child has failed. So we have to really find a way of promoting that. The second thing is how do we now very fast and very soon, because we used to say there's the issue of access to market. Now we've been here for 2 days, we've been assured, and I think really we have to be very positive about our continent and our leaders, because there is the Africa Free Trade Area. Most of the countries have deposed the instruments. We heard yesterday Afreximbank and everyone else showing us what are the facilitation they're doing to trade, but how and what it's going to take us to support these young people to enter in this sector and really transform the rural area. How do we get the young people with a degree and a phone in the rural area where there is no water. Access to water is a challenge. Electricity is a challenge. Access to connectivity, internet is a challenge. Even where it is there, it's inaccessible because the cost and the lack of harmonization of the price of this. How do we make all those challenges opportunities for these young people to enter the sector?
Thank you very much. I'm a practical example of a young person that has no fear. It all begins there. One, here in KwaZulu-Natal, we said there will be nothing about us without us. There shall be nothing about us without us. Two, we went to do our own investigations in hospitals. We wanted to know how many people are sleeping in the beds in this hospital of ours in KwaZulu-Natal. We found that the number of 96% are black people. When we questioned who is supplying food in those hospitals, either private or public, we got that it's white-owned companies only. 500 beds, 600 hospitals. Within a hospital, 500 times 600. Now you could calculate alone a market, which is us as black African people. Yet, the food that is given to us is only white-owned. We must never forget where do we come from as Africa. The reason why we're still here is that us as young people have forgotten where do we come from. I cannot sit here and tell young people they must beg for what is theirs. It can't be. Young people in Africa must start to understand that they are the future. Young people in this house, it must not be about talk shops and rhetoric. It can't be. We cannot have seminars after seminars without practical endeavors. We need deliverables. Let this not be a talk shop. Let's make our government accountable. We were told when we were growing that we are government, but it's vice versa. We are the ones that are voting for our politicians and we give them a mandate. When we give our politicians a mandate, it's vice versa. They become owners of us. It seems like now they are controlling us. It can't be. We rely on us as a market to benefit us. We need an Africa that is united. For many years we have been colonialized. Ma'am, it cannot be that it's our responsibility that young people are taught that if I want to challenge you, or if I want to at least compromise you in anyhow, you must go to agribusiness. Our fathers, our forefathers, remember, they were not trading, but they were slaves using agribusiness. I am not motivated to become like him. It's only an instrument. He needs someone to motivate. I cannot. How? Because my father was a slave using agribusiness as a method. Which means young people, when they are pushed to agribusiness, you are pushing them to slavery. It's the mindset that needs to change. Even the education system of ours, agribusiness is not taught at school. But it's something that generates profit margin. You cannot live without having food in your stomach. But we are not taught the truth. We are taught everything to become doctors so that we serve a master. Who is a master here? Africa was colonized, so we are serving masters. Us as young people must stand up and say enough is enough on that. As we are moving forward, because you cannot separate a political statement, socially, economically, you need to balance everything. Here we speak about technology, fourth industrialism. Everything that happens now is need machinery. It needs the means of production. You cannot be economically fit when you do not own means of production. So young people must challenge their government. Here in KwaZulu-Natal, as I said, I'm a practical example. We've challenged our government and said, minimum of 40% procurement must go to young people. Then that's whatever that you do, you must include young people. Otherwise, young people will be at the end as a backing zone of their own opportunities. This can't be. Young people must get educated. Young people must be motivated to open companies. But however, government must open a set-aside procurement system so that the target market is young people, to provide food into rural areas, to make sure that everything that we do, they are centered. Then government must achieve access to capital so that young people have their own budgets, they fight amongst, and then they set aside. In rural areas, as I learned, on the value chain, then we are in disaster. Therefore, my talk here today is to say young people must stand up, be united, and fight for what is theirs. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mr. Mkhuzi, we heard what Mr. Ndozi had to say, and I think, you know, by the, the audience, he hits from some points. So, from your perspective now, because we heard a lot of relevant points from him, what is it that South African youth, for instance, and the rest of the youth who are here, how do you connect? How do you change the narrative? How do you, as I say, you network, with this new technology to increase the volume of your voice and to be able to advocate for more participation and more contribution to the value chain? We are not saying here that we have to go on the street and toy. No, we are saying you are educated, you have knowledge. What is it that a message you have to convey to our governments, to our donors, on how you go, they can facilitate you to be the future of the continent? As somebody said yesterday here in this room, they said they want you to be the next billionaires, but you have to tell them, you have to ask them, you have to facilitate the ask and say, this is what we need, you know, in the African way. Yeah, this is what we need, and please, for us to do this, we need to be enabled, and this is what it is. And as Mr. Ndozi say, it's not a question of youth or South Africa or anywhere, it's about the continent. The continent has become one now. The free movement of goods and people is going to change, but it cannot change with Ali and myself. It's going to change with you young people. What is it that you need to do to get there?
Thank you very much, Petrus. I would say two things first before I go straight to your question of saying that what we need to do. I was attending a boot camp with women agri-business boot camp. I said, the future is us, but you are not the future if you don't want to. You need to want to. Second, given a platform, that means in the form of empowerment. Those who are in the position of authority and empowerment should do so. More especially if it's the people of the color who are advocating for the same thing, should directly do so and be real in making sure that our policies are enforced if they are meant to assist equality in this economy and food security and employment as well. Those are the two things. But first, what makes a farmer is not that you have a degree in agriculture. You can't be a farmer without a degree. What makes a farmer is that one, you own land, two, you work it. You are a farmer then. So we don't have to be confused with statistics of saying that there are these much farmers. There are a lot of graduates in South Africa. In KZN on its own, there are 2 agricultural colleges. I'm one of the product of one of them in Bangen College of Agriculture. There are universities. There are thousands and thousands of agricultural graduates that are produced every year. Where are those graduates? That is the question we need to ask ourselves, not only in South Africa. I think in Africa as a whole, where are those graduates? What is happening with them? You find them in 2 years after their studies, one of them even forgot how to plant a cabbage, but in an agricultural graduate. Why? Because he or she does not have own land, or have land, or even working something or a small garden. And you can't blame those people. So, but what we need first to do, because what we are having is a system, then how do we work? As I've been saying, that we need to be aggressive and unapologetic. It's not a fight of hand to hand or guns, no. We need everyone to partake. We are not saying those who are having it should just be thrown somewhere else and move. We need to work, collaborate and work. How do we do so? We've been told about constitutions, policies, but it seems like they are not working in our advantage or everyone's advantage as a citizen, either of South Africa or any other country in Africa. Then, what we need to do is that we need to be organized. Either in a space of farming as farmers, in a space of engineering as engineers, in a space of accounting as accountants. We need to be organized. Yes, we understand the history. It was divide and conquer. Yet we are divided. We are still divided. That is a major thing. We need to be organized. At the moment we go alone. You go alone as Mtokozi Sintego. I want to achieve my own goals, but there is my brother here who's in the same space. I want to achieve my own goals. If you see history, those who have it, they were organized. That's why you find a lot of associations. They have their own associations. A simple thing. In Mpumalanga, for example, in a region of Kangala district, you'll find a group of farmers, commercial farmers, occupying the same space. I don't want to mention color, but whenever there's something, just simple things, there is rain coming, everyone needs to be prepared, they need to plant. And then you'll see a lot of them in the afternoon, even at 8 p.m., the machine are on the ground, they are working. They are organized. That means you're fighting the system, because already the constitution, I would say, is helping but not helping. That means we need to be organized as farmers. Either we form associations, we don't adopt, because there's this syndrome of adopting either not per se policies, but way of doing things. If cooperatives worked in China, it does not mean they will be applicable locally in South Africa. So we need to see those things and put more focus on them, of saying that we adopt things that will assist us in advocating for making sure that we make agriculture one fashionable, so that we are able to attract youth to partake in agriculture. And then we have numbers, and in that way we become organized, and then we are fighting for the platform. Because I always think that I can be an activist in the rural areas where I come from, in a show. Hey, we want this, but where are you? Which platform are you advocating within? If you are not in the platform of advocating for either policy change or policy advancement in order to accommodate the current situation, then you are just an activist. And nothing will happen, because things will stand still. So let it be that we are organized and we are given a proper platform of saying that we can sit down here and talk, but let's say there is no government here. It's just us. That means you are advocating to us.
Thank you.
Then I think in that way we can move.
Thank you. Richard, how is agri-technology going to provide opportunities in the value chain of everything technology in agriculture, please? I know that in West Africa you have a lot of experience that probably is not unknown on the rest of the continent, because of course we always use the example of saying, oh, I'm from West Africa, I'm French speaking, and I cannot communicate or share with the Anglophone. But we always wonder how the Chinese come to our continent. They don't speak English and French, but they make money. So I think the young people have to think about that. So how do we use that agri-technology and communicate and bring something that is going to bring opportunities in the value chain of agri-tech?
Thank you. So I think if we really want to bring opportunity to the farmers, I mean those on the ground working, sowing, we have to find solution to some challenges in agriculture. For example, we know that most of our farmers are not graduate people. They don't go to school, for example. At least a major amount of them. So there are many technologies currently out there, but our farmers can't use those technologies. So bringing opportunity for them is to find a way to put that high level technology at a low level so that they can use the technology themselves. For example, in the concept of geospatial technology, we used to say down to earth. Like we have to bring those high, like launching satellite to space or space exploration. All those things are beautiful and great, but now we need to bring them down and to connect space to villages. So if we are able, for example, to provide a software which can help the farmer understand climate information in his own language, for example, I think we are bringing a real value to that farmer. But we know also that in Africa, a lot of farmers produce, but they are not able to sell their product. So we can leverage on technology to help them to access the market, for example. So maybe one last thing is to notice that we have to be intentional. For example, my brother here talked about education, and we have to be intentional about knowledge production. And I think someone from the Vatican representative yesterday speaks about that. We have to be intentional about education and knowledge. So, I mean, we have to even train the farmers. We can't just be there, oh, they are not graduate, they don't go to school, so they have nothing to see with technology. No, we can actually train them. And to do that, we have to find new ways. And that's where innovation comes in. So we have to figure out how we can actually put the technology in the hands of our farmers so that they can leverage on. Thank you. Yeah.
Eva, you are a young woman trading in a very challenging value chain. What is, if you had to give two barriers to trade or to access finance or market or technology, just because you're a young woman on the continent, what will be those two challenges?
Please just repeat the
I
question
said,
again.
you are a young woman trading in aquaculture, and you are doing business, and we know, we have evidence-based information that there are a lot of trading barriers for women in accessing many things. First of all, access to finance, and we know market access and everything else. What are the two most challenging issues that you face just because you are a woman born on the continent?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think the two things that I would say, the first thing is also access to market. I mean, there are different dynamics when it comes to access to market. So basically, I don't know, depending on which environment you come from, which sometimes it might be similar, it's also the issue of male to female interaction. So sometimes you would go in a meeting, and because I am female, I tend to be looked into a different way than a man would be looked at. Though I would want to transact, there will be other dynamics that will be of sort of like a challenge. And this I have seen really, like, as we try to approach different customers as well. I mean, not only as male to female, but also young to old. I mean, in certain environment, for instance, where I come from, like if I would want to discuss with somebody who is a little bit older, they might be looking at me in a different context. And this is really is a challenge. And when it comes to finance, again, I think this is really a challenge, not just because I am a woman, but typically as a young mind, this is challenging in trading. And then I think the previous session sort of like talked about it, on how you can go about different, like approaching finance at a different level. And sometimes as a young person, your risk level, your risk appetite is not so high. And for you to sort of like grow to a certain extent. So this can sometimes be a challenge. And other distractions as well. I would say on a context of, as a young person, sometimes your priorities are not necessarily, you know, at a young age, you wouldn't want to commit to a business. You have other priorities. So, and you have to give up certain things for you to sort of like benefit and be successful in business. I have friends who sort of like have issues with me on a practical level, that because I am prioritizing business and I don't have so much time for family and friends, that this becomes an issue. But in terms of can do to leverage this, it's also use different platforms of networking. And one way to look at this is using women empowerment platforms as well. This is very good because you're in a platform where women share similar challenges or things that they experience on different level, and having to discuss this sort of like give you a sort of like a motivation for you to continue what you are doing. Yeah.
Turn to the audience for questions and answers, please. I think this is the last session of the day, Mr. Who is the? So we'll have take time for the questions, and the panel will answer accordingly. There is a young lady up there who started. Yes, please give your name and be brief on your questions, so you give time for others also to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much again for the opportunity. Can you hear me? Thank you so much again for the opportunity. My name is Mbalenhle Mabungwana from Eshowe, and my question is directed to you, Mr. Eshowe. As the top tier of funding, is there anything that you guys are doing to accelerate information unto us as young black women in business? Because I think you would know, there was a post on Facebook that said all upcoming agricultural business people must come to King Dunuzulu for sponsorship. Everyone went there. Apparently it was a scam. People got scammed because before you were sponsored you had to pay. Apparently it was something that had to be applied for online. So I was one of the people who almost applied. So what I want to know is, in Eshowe in particular, for black African women, is there anything that you are doing to supply information unto us? Is there anything that you are doing to supply us with sponsorship? Because there are times when Inkukuzami would die of cold because I don't have a generator. When there's load shedding, they are cold, they are small, they are cold, and at the moment I cannot afford a generator. But when it's very cold, they need that kind of heat. Secondly, I just want to know from you, sir, I'm not very good with names, the poultry school that you mentioned, where is it? And is there anything that, Mkhayawami, that you are doing in order to have funds or bursaries for people who, like myself, who cannot afford financial help to go to an institution and further my studies? If yes, where do we get them?
Thank you.
Where are those
Thank you.
doors?
Thank you. Thank you. So please, let's be generous and share geographically also. So because if you have a direct issue with a show, you know, you can do a side meeting after. But please, let's share and be generous with other youths from other countries, so they can also let their voice heard. Yes, the gentleman.
Okay, for me is an observation and a small.
Please, your name and your country.
My name is Sidiki Savadogo. I come from Burkina Faso.
Vous pouvez parler en français aussi.
Effectivement, je crois que ça sera très très bien pour moi. Mon nom est Sidiki Savadogo. Je suis promoteur de Agridev Burkina Faso. Donc Agridev fait dans le développement agricole. moi-même ingénieur des mines, j'ai décidé d'abandonner pour venir à l'agriculture parce que je crois que dans la vie de tous les jours, on n'a pas toujours besoin d'or, mais on a toujours besoin de nourriture. Pour parler un peu d'agriculture dans mon pays...
C'est une question.
Non, c'est plutôt une observation. Donc je vais passer mon tour et après...
D'accord.
Voilà.
Une minute, ok.
Bonsoir. Moi, je me présente au nom de Sayabade Dumenasara. Je suis promotrice de l'entreprise d'aide locale qui intervient dans le domaine de l'agriculture et la transformation agroalimentaire. Moi, ma question est comment donner l'opportunité aux jeunes entrepreneurs agricoles, agriculteurs, d'avoir l'accès à la nouvelle technologie agricole, vu qu'on n'a pas le même climat en Afrique. Si vous prenez par exemple Bénin, Togo, on n'a pas le même climat avec le Niger, Tchad et Burkina. Donc on a l'eau qui n'est pas profonde, mais le climat n'est pas du tout le même. Comment donner l'opportunité à avoir l'accès à la nouvelle technologie pour dynamiser l'agriculture?
D'accord, merci.
No, sanibona umuntu abingelela. My name is Wanda. My surname is Chata. I come from PPF. My president is also part of the panel there. We are for economic transformation, and we believe that the economy must be radically transformed. And now we can speak about many things, but I think what we need to do emerging from here is to have a clear direction to where we are going. Africa remains untransformed. Not even a percentage of Africa is transformed, but Africa is very rich, we all know, in terms of mineral resources, and I can't stress that much. But what then do we do if we want Africa to prosper? One, when we look at Agenda 2063, it speaks of silencing the guns in Africa for Africa to prosper and develop the way we want it. Now, I think if this platform cannot address this issue, because many of those soldiers who are fighting this war are young people, are youth, and they are fighting the agenda of elders that does not benefit them. They either die there or they have no future. So I think we need to really address the issue of wars in Africa and how it impacts youth and how will it impact the future. So I think because here, Asia and Tammy, you are here, I think there need to be some sort of an MOU between those who have organized this session and Asia and young people, so that we speak beyond this sitting about these challenges and how does this African bank will facilitate young people to access opportunities in the African continent and the diaspora. Okay. So I can speak about many things, but it's crucial that we prioritize, then we also have a way forward. Mine is that there has to be an MOU between ATA and the bank and the facilitators, and start to speak about selecting the guns and the transformation agenda of the African continent economy.
Because our time is almost going, if I watch the time, and so we have probably another two. Please, I will appeal to everyone. The session is on changing the narrative, agriculture, agribusiness value chain. Let's stick to that. I heard your message, we'll convey to the organizers. So let us stay in the context of...
Hello?
And there's a question, please.
Yes.
I'm taking only questions, not observations. Because you can, write to the organizers, if you have observations, because time is really running out and I have to close the session
few minutes.
Okay, I am Kenem Brendalin from Cameroon.
Yes.
Founder of Agribusiness Solutions Limited. So my question goes to the first panelist. As he rightly said about the poultry, that everybody likes poultry.
Yes.
I'm going to ask the question that I have two questions. When we talk about the value chain for the raw materials that Africa produce, where does Africa really in the value chain of agriculture? Because the inputs, like poultry, for example, in my country, Cameroon, when we are writing business plans, the parent stock is not in Cameroon. Nobody produces it. And those who produce the parent stock are those who control the poultry market. So where are we when the inputs of the poultry comes from the outside? That means they control the quality of what we eat. So I just wish to ask, how can the youth bridge this gap when there is no funds for research for us to make the genetics and all the like to make those parent stocks back here in Africa?
Thank you. I think all the panelists, when we close the session, they'll be out there. You can side chat, but I really have time constraint, and I'm taking only one last question. Otherwise, I have to close the session. Please, excuse me.
Thank you. I'm Prince Justin Ajingatan.
From? I can't hear. We can't hear. You have a problem with the mic. Anyone from IT? We have a problem with the mic. This is an interesting session, isn't it? Just speak. You can speak. A question, please. Can you?
Hello. Hello. Okay. Thank you. I'm called Prince Justin Ajingatani.
Just one question, please.
I'm the founder of Union Farms of Africa in Cameroon. Please permit me to ask two questions.
One question, please.
I want to
Somebody
ask,
from Cameroon just spoke,
okay.
and we said we have to share.
I want to ask my question to my brother from Togo, the IT persons. I really do not believe that a farmer needs to go to an institute to learn how to use a GPS to load the data that we can read from everywhere, or neither do I believe that a farmer needs to go to another institute to be able to set up an irrigation system in their farms. Because when we keep talking about education, to me, I think that is not the way forward. When you look at communities like Israel and India, I met a lot of farmers there who could set up their irrigation system, who could pick the GPS coordinates and send to the Ministry of Agriculture, and automatically they could feed them back with the kind of information they need. So what do we do as these technical persons? Instead of telling the farmers that you need to go to the US to learn the NASA, you need to go to the university to do 4 years to become a water treatment expert, with facilities like this, how do we leverage on that to get them on work? Because really we are 100 years behind.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think you are staying in the same hotel, so he can give you a one-on-one session to answer that question. Thank you very much. So please, let me just ask Mr. Ali, you have a question to answer on poetry. Please be succinct, because I really have to close the session. And after that, Richard and Mr. Dozie, you will close by saying just in few words on how, this whole agriculture value chain, it's all depend on them, what they want to do, because the instruments are there, platform are there, support is there. Then what about their part? I think then we'll close this session. Thank you. Mr. Ali.
You can hear me okay? Yes. So thank you for the question. I think delegate from Cameroon was asking about poultry. I understand the challenges associated with back to the question of what to do, right? I would say, you really have to find, a beginning point. Okay, it is true. If you're talking about massive scale, big commercial scale production, you have to rely on others, genetics and everything else. That's normal. That's not unusual. But first, I think the focus should be start small. Small step, maybe focus just on layers. You don't need to, start something about, broilers or breeding. Maybe that's not, that's more capital intensive. You need something, you get, once you study the whole operation, you'll figure out where is the entry point that is possible for me with my limited resources. That's where you begin. And this center I talked about today, I visited today, that's what they do. They teach hands-on skills on how to raise poultry, how to do the layers, how to do the broilers, how to figure out what to feed them, what's the feed formulation. You said you mentioned the feed requirements. All of that is information that you have to assemble together in a way that saves, that's possible in the operation of the business. So, there's quite a bit of information. I would say think small, in the beginning. Don't think big. Start, one little operation first, and then go from there and look for places that you can acquire those skills from. That's the beginning point. Thank you.
So is it something internal? So you could discuss that after this meeting. And Richard, please go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay, sorry, thank you. So my point was not to send back the farmer to school. When I talk about education and training, we have to meet the farmers where their needs are. For example, you talk about India or Japan, etc. Those farmers were able or are able to use the technologies because they were trained or they knew how to use it, right? So my point is not to send them back to school, no. And also, right? So that was my point, not send them back to school. So I think we're okay. So now for my sister, we are launching in January 2022 our agricultural technology platform, which will be basically allowing farmers to get weather information, soil information, and information about the whole value chain, agriculture value chain. So there are other platforms like that. So you can reach out to see what fits your needs, or you can approach me. We can discuss what we can help you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mr. Ndozi, in 2 minutes, what is your message to the youth, to the continental youth here from your experience? Thank you in 2 minutes. So we close this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We wouldn't appreciate this platform to end here. We are here for engagements and networking. Let us network, let us engage, let us visit our continent. We invite people to join Black Business Federation so that anyone that wants to be a red tape, we remove immediately. We just remove. There is no young person that don't have a right in his country or her country. They are the future, and anything they want must be given. A country that does not nourish its youth don't deserve its future. So it's about time, because unfortunately, my apology, the older generation doesn't understand that now they are old. They need to bring the youth to the authority positions. They assume our cabinets, everyone is old. They don't have these ideas that we need as young people. So no one must speak on our behalf while we are present. Young people must take notion. Young people are skilled. Young people want empowerment. Young people are there. So my take is to say here, let us make sure that we unlock each and every opportunity on the behalf of young people moving forward. This continent is ours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to make sure that this network is going to continue and is going to be interactive and be owned by young people. We facilitate, and it starts today, and I think this is a very good message to take away. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the youth. You know, keep dreaming. You know, some of the people will hold your dream. The continent and the future is yours. Take it. It's there for you to take it. Thank you very much. Thank you. I think we need a picture, I think.